45 minutes. So enjoy the rest of your time in Boston, folks. Have a great day.
Well, we're going to ride one of these boats. We're not sure which one. I bet it'll almost be that second one. But irregardless, in a few minutes we're going to ride one of them.
Many famous names in the course of American history are from the Boston area. Several U.S. presidents, John Kennedy, of course, Calvin Coolidge. John Adams was the first vice president under Washington and the second president of the United States. Benjamin Franklin was born here in Boston. Young Ben sold newspapers on the streets of the city as a boy. And John Hancock was a wealthy Boston merchant and ship owner. He helped finance the Revolution and helped draft the Declaration of Independence, which he so very prominently signed, so that, as he said, King George would need his glasses to read his name there. And many of the events that led up to the Revolution happened here in Boston as well. Over on our right side now, there's a brown steel bridge spanning the channel there. If you look real carefully through the center of the bridge there, you might be able to see the mast and the cross yards of the sailing brig Beaver, steamed of 1773. So a group of American patriots who were very loosely disguised as Indians came down to the Boston waterfront there and dumped a cargo of the used tea ships in the harbor to protest unfair taxation. And it was this rebellious act, ever since known as the Boston Tea Party, that caused the angry English king, that George. And all this is a strong indication of the increasing health of what once was a very polluted harbor. But today there are no longer textile and paper mills up the rivers, and the billion-dollar sewage treatment plant over beyond the airport has certainly done its part as well. And next on the waterfront is Commonwealth Theater with the World Trade Center on it. This large auditorium hosts many trade shows and exhibits throughout the year, and the Boston Boat Show is held here every spring. And coming up next on our ride ahead of us is the famous Boston Fish Pier, built out here in this newly built land in 1914 to accommodate Boston's huge fishing fleet, which used to tie up downtown on the backside of Long Wharf. And they built the pier here to consolidate the boats and the industry all in one place, to improve a lot of the congestion of downtown and to improve that delicious smell as well. And we see a variety of fishing boats at the dock. The boats have a motor retention and processing plants right on the pier. The boats go 150 miles east of Boston up to Bay, one of the biggest fishing areas in the world. And the series of fish by foreign colonists legislation, including closure, and the signature food item of the region. The lobster industry worth some $200 million to the economy of New England every year. And beyond, on the hilltop, on the horizon, a white spire. This is the Dorchester Heights National Monument, and this marks the spot where General Washington placed a battery of cannon during the siege of the city. The colonial army had very few cannons of its own, and the cannon that were placed there were captured from the British at Fort Ponderosa in upstate New York by Lieutenant Donald and Ethan Allen. Brought laboriously overland in the dead of a bitter cold winter and placed on those heights in March of 1776. These British cannons sealed the fate of the British Army in Boston. From the heights, they could fire down into the city itself, pack British troops, or upon British warships at anchor in the harbor where we are now. Finding their position untenable, the British generals sued for terms, and Washington graciously allowed the British to evacuate Boston unmolested if they would not burn the city. And so the British Army boarded the ships of their fleet at Long Wharf, sailed out of this harbor forever in defeat on March 17th of 1776. A day still celebrated every year here in Boston as Evacuation Day, but of course you do already know that, don't you? And now as we turn across the harbor, over on our right side is the entrance to Boston Harbor through the President Road, called the King's Road in colonial days, of course. And on the horizon are the islands of the outer harbor. 32 in all, part of the newly formed Boston Harbor Islands National Park, which is a unique resource to all the citizens of the Commonwealth and every visitor here as well. Our boats go out to the islands during the summer for days hiking and exploring the islands of the harbor. Beyond the islands, the North Atlantic Ocean. Another 20 miles further out is the Stellwagen Bank, an area where the whales come every summer to feed just north of Cape Cod, and our whale watch vessels go out there every day to visit the whales on the Stellwagen Bank. And 3,200 miles due east from here, eventually, if you're lucky or a very tenacious swimmer, you reach the European mainland at Portugal, which lies due east of us, right on our same latitude. Coming up next on our right, as we continue around, is Logan Airport. One of the busiest airports in the world, averaging one flight a minute throughout the day, 24 million passengers a year. The first flight flew out of Boston in 1923. All the land under the airport is built on landfill as well. There were 3 small islands out in the harbor there at one time, which were leveled and landfilled between to create the 2,200-acre area of the present-day airport. If you've ever flown in and out of Logan, you may notice how steeply the planes arrive in the park here, turn east to climb out over the ocean. The control tower at Logan is the second tallest in the world today after Denver's new one. This one here, 22 stories, 310 feet above the runways of Logan. And over on our port side now, on our left side, we get our best view of the beautiful skyline of the city of Boston. Which looks quite a bit different now than it did just 40-odd years ago, and that every tall building there but one was not built back then. Boston was built on 3 prominent hills, called Tri-Mount in the early days, remembered in Tremont Street downtown, but only Beacon Hill remains today with the State House on it. The other hills leveled to create land to swell the population of the city through those years, spilled over into East Boston, over on our right side now, which is still one of the ethnic melting pots of a very diverse city. On our right here, they took one of these old wharves and stripped away all the wooden pilings that surrounded the granite block core of the original pier, built a beautiful park on the shoreline there and out onto the end of the pier itself, which is, appropriately enough, named Piers Park in memory of the glory days of the East Boston waterfront. And usually next we'll see here one of the orange and black vessels of the Boston Harbor Pilot, the oldest pilot association in America, founded in 1795. Although there had been a King's pilot in the harbor from the earliest days, pilots go out in their small vessels in all seasons and all weathers, year-round, to meet the large ships offshore. And they go aboard out there and with their navigational skills and knowledge of the harbor, guide the ships safely through the dock, and later take them out again. Boston's number 1 import is foreign oil. Most homes move on heating oil, aviation fuel, diesel, and gasoline as well. Rock salt from Spain, the Caribbean for the highways in winter. Gypsum, plaster, and cement for construction. Thousands of automobiles brought to the carport up the river in Charlestown. We're now passing over the subway tunnel that runs beneath us from downtown over to the airport and points north to the Blue Line. Part of Boston's finely extensive subway system, the first subway in America ran underneath the Boston Common in 1897. Before the subway and automobiles, tunnels and bridges, there were hundreds of ferries that crisscrossed the harbor providing transportation into the city. The first ferries in the New World ran here in Boston Harbor. On our right is the oldest Boston Ferry landing, with the roadway running down to it, the pilings in the V-shape guided the ferry to the dock. The railroads ran right down the landing where the passengers would then board the ferry for the penny fare trip across the harbor. The automobile brought about the end of the original ferries in the early 1950s. It's also the automobile that has since seen the return of numerous commuter ferry boats throughout the harbor, and this is because of now intense traffic jams on the city's highway. So once again, ferries have become a very important and a very popular and pleasant alternative to rush hour traffic and the great expense of parking in downtown Boston, as you may already well know. Along this East Boston shoreline and up the river stood many shipyards. One of them belonged to Donald McKay, the master designer and shipbuilder, perfected the clipper ships right here in Boston. The most famous of his ships would probably be the Flying Cloud, which made the passage around the Horn from New York to San Francisco in a record 89 days and 8 hours in 1851. And that record stood unbroken until 1973. In a modern sailboat, the Great American made the same passage in 69 days, which was 4 separate tries at a cost of several $1 million, whereas the Flying Cloud set its record on its maiden voyage, carried a cargo that more than paid for the construction of the vessel itself. It's interesting to note that ships are the largest moving objects that have ever yet been built by man. And now we're deep in the inner harbor. Over on our right side now the Mystic River comes downstream towards us. Spanning the river up there, the Green Tobin Bridge, named for one of Boston's famous mayors, Maurice Tobin. This is also one of the longest bridges in America at 2.5 miles, only crosses 800 feet of waterway up there, but it continues elevated on either end to get the height necessary for large ships to pass under upriver. The bridge, also known locally as the world's longest parking lot because of traffic stalled there for long periods of time in the weekday rush hour with only one possibility of exit. Up the river under the bridge are gray oil storage tanks, part of a huge tank farm that hold the petroleum products that are delivered here to Boston in huge tanker ships. And now we're driving up into the Charles River over on our left, and then on our right is Charlestown, both named for King Charles of England, never changed. Charlestown is the site of the second oldest Navy yard in America after Philadelphia. The yard here was closed in the 70s to save money, a great blow to the local economy at the time, put many skilled workers out of jobs, and ended nearly 200 years of Navy presence in Boston Harbor. Today, the old buildings and workshops of the Navy Yard are being reused as a light industrial and office park. Many apartments and condominiums here as well. And between the great wharves of the former Navy Yard are now marinas for small private boats. And ahead of us on our right, on the hilltop there, is a granite obelisk tower, the Bunker Hill National Monument. And this marks the spot where the Battle of Bunker Hill took place in June of 1775, during the occupation and siege of the city. The British in Boston awoke that particular morning to observe that the Minutemen had built an earthen fortress on the hilltop there, armed with 2 small cannons and 1,200 men. Their honor and their safety challenged, the British sent over 3,000 of their own troops and made 3 separate assaults on that hilltop on a hot June afternoon, witnessed by hundreds of spectators and the British generals from the rooftops of Boston. Part of the Navy Yard has been preserved here in the Charlestown Navy Yard National Park. There's a fine museum and ships on display here, all free of charge. The World War II Fletcher-class destroyer, number 793, is the Cassin Young, named for a Navy officer from Massachusetts who earned the Medal of Honor at Pearl Harbor and gave his life in a Navy battle at Guadalcanal early in the war. The ship was built on the West Coast in 1943, and it saw action in the South Pacific in the war. The ship was twice struck by Japanese kamikaze planes while on picket duty around the American invasion fleet at Okinawa. Killed 22 sailors aboard. Rebuilt and now decommissioned, she is part of the National Park Service fleet and a fine example of the many ships of this type and others that were built right here at the Navy Yard and at the many shipyards that used to be all around Boston Harbor. Now we're approaching the Navy Yard dock now. We'll be landing in just a moment. We invite you to go ashore here and visit the ships on display, including the USS Constitution, at the most famous resident of Boston Harbor, the USS Constitution. This is the oldest commissioned warship afloat in the world today. It was built right here in Boston, launched in October of 1797. She stands number 1 on the Navy list of ships, carries a full crew of enlisted Navy personnel, drawn from deserving individuals in the ranks, and she's had 67 captains in her long career at sea, and even has a place in the Guinness Book of Records. She first saw action in 1803 against the Barbary pirates off the North African coast, but she gained her undying fame in the War of 1812 when she encountered the British warship Guerriere, the Warrior. Upon closing with the Constitution in battle, the British gunners observed their solid cannon shot bounce from the 22-inch thick white oak sides of the Constitution, and they thought she must be made of iron. After the half-hour battle in which Guerriere was totally destroyed, the captured British gunners told the story of those bouncing cannonballs to the men of the Constitution, and so was adopted this ship's famous nickname, Old Ironsides, later immortalized in poem by Bostonian Oliver Wendell Holmes. She's never lost any of her 42 battles, and enemies never set foot on those decks except he's been a prisoner, and never lost any crewman prisoner to another vessel, although many gave their lives in defense of America's freedoms aboard those very decks. She was a revolution in design for her day, very strongly built and powerfully armed with 44 or more cannons, a very fast and maneuverable sailing ship as well, 15 knots in a good stiff breeze, a little faster than we can manage. And so any ship that she couldn't outgun, she could certainly outrun. She weighs in at 2,250 tons loaded, 176 feet at the waterline, 220 feet to the top of the towering mainmast, and should draw 24 feet of water. She has been rebuilt a number of times. Some of us might remember having saved our pennies as school children to rescue the Constitution from the wreckers. Approximately 10% of the ship is still the original wood, mostly in the keel and the ribs of the ship, heart of a vessel, which were hewn from very durable Georgia live oak. And now we're going to turn to head back down the harbor again. And over on our right side is the Charles River Dam and the locks, which control the water level up the river. Beyond the dam is the Green Southeast Expressway spanning the river, placed by the new cable bridge beyond, with the towers that echo the shape of Bunker Hill Monument. And next on our right here is the historic North End, the size of the Italian enclave in the city today. You find many fine Italian restaurants and cafes throughout the North End. Take your pick, you won't be disappointed. This part of the city has seen many incarnations through the years. It was the sailors' district, where the rooming houses were and the industry of the city. During the years of immigration, it became the Irish district, later became the Jewish quarter, then the Italians came, and they still remain. Rising above the north end, the beautiful white steeple of the Old North Church, built in 1723, the oldest church still standing in Boston. And it gained its fame when two lanterns were hung from the upper windows there in a very secret signal to those across the river that the British would be moving out of Boston by boat across the river. There to begin their march out to Lexington and Concord to capture the arms, ammunition, and the leaders of the Revolution, which they knew were out there. And some Paul Revere and William Dawes and several others made their famous midnight rides to the countryside of the danger. And very early holiday morning on April 19th of 1775, a shot was fired on the green at Lexington, and it was heard around the world. And so began, in earnest, with bloodshed, the American Revolution. And next on our right coming up is Constitution Wharf. This is where the Constitution was built at Hart Shipyard on the shore. This is now the Coast Guard base in Boston. The Coast Guard founded in 1790. Assist the vessel in distress. The larger vessels have helicopter landing pads aft, and some have helicopter hangars that extend out over the decks to shelter the travelers out at sea. The Coast Guard's motto is Semper Paratus, always ready. And they are a unique military service as well, in that their primary mission is the saving of lives. And you'll take note that the Coast Guard keeps all of our ships and equipment in excellent condition, and here again, tax dollars are well spent. And coming up next on our right is the site of Battery Wharf. Battery Wharf got its name from the battery of cannon that armed a wooden fortress that stood out in the harbor defending the city in the days, a military post in Boston for many years. It was from Battery Wharf that the Massachusetts 54th Regiment sailed into history. The 54th was the first all-black combat regiment formed in the U.S. Army. They assembled and trained on the Boston Common, marched from the city in the Grand Parade down to the dock, where they boarded a ship and sailed off into their destiny. And their story beautifully told in the movie Glory. And next there, a lot of apartments are built on Lincoln Wharf, directly over the Sumner and Callahan Highway tunnels that are linking the city to the North Shore. And this is where the Boston Fire boats tie up. You usually see a firefighter here, armed with water cannons on its deck. And behind it, usually, the baller St. Florian. St. Florian, the now very busy patron saint of firemen everywhere. Behind the apartments, a large red brick building that was once the Lincoln Wharf Power Plant, or coal-fired plant, which generated all electricity for the elevated railways that ran throughout the city at one time. And coming up next on our right on the waterfront is Union Wharf. You can see that they built record townhouses out onto the end of this particular pier. And if you might be in the market for a 3-story, 3-bedroom, waterfront, harbor view, townhouse apartment with a patio deck out over the harbor, a swimming pool, a beautiful garden courtyard there, 2 parking spaces deeded to every apartment here. Very important in this city. One of these end units here might be for sale. Such a deal. Move right in. Only $2.5 million for a waterfront apartment right on Boston Harbor, but adjacent to the fabulous North End. Next on the waterfront is Lewis Wharf, today the headquarters of the Boston Sailing Club. You can see all their sailboats here. Come on and join up. If you remember, they'll teach you how to sail if you need, and then you can take the boats out. They also sponsor races through the harbor, all year round, which can be a tour boat captain's night. Rising above the city skyline, you get a good view of Boston's first skyscraper, the Customs House Tower. Clocks on each side, completed in 1914, and it stood all alone on the Boston skyline till the building boom in the 60s got underway. Wooden griffins guarding underneath the clocks, and at the very peak is a small pyramid of the exotic metal of that day. Operated by Marriott, a timeshare hotel. Coming into view behind Commercial Wharf is Columbus Park, a beautiful little park at the water's edge, a great place to relax after cruise and go by. Beyond the trees, the copper dome of Princeton Market was built on the waterfront in 1845, and beyond that, the white cupola and the gold dome of Faneuil Hall with its famous grasshopper weather vane. And that was built on the original shoreline up at the head of Town Cove in 1747. And this has been the city's market and meeting place through the centuries, and it still is today. You'll find many stores and food stalls and restaurants, entertainers on the street, and in the taverns by night. A great place to be in Boston anytime, night or day, host to 15 million visitors every year. And nearby, you'll also find the oldest and one of the finest restaurants in America there, the Union Oyster House, which has been in continuous operation since 1826. And now we're passing by the end of Long Wharf again, and as we pass by the end of the pier, you can peer right up State Street, which used to be called King Street in colonial days, of course. And you get a glimpse there of the old State House with its small gold dome cap. It was built by the British government in 1713 as the seat of all their power in the American colonies. The assembly gathered there, as did the royal governor and the hated tax collector. It was once one of the most prominent buildings on the Boston skyline. After the Revolution, the Massachusetts Assembly gathered there, and for a while it was Boston City Hall. Today there's a really fine museum in the building, operated by the Bostonian Society, about the history of the city through the centuries. Well, we'll visit there. And restored to the gabled rooftop of the building are the gilded symbols of the British Empire, the lion and the unicorn. Directly in front of the State House is the site of the Boston Massacre, one of the pivotal events leading up to the Revolution. And directly beside the State House is the National Park Service headquarters here in Boston. A great place to get maps and books and information for your travels around the city. And the Rangers offer many free walking tours to the historic sites of Boston, all free of charge. And here again, your tax dollars are well spent. And the Rangers offer free walking tours here to the many historic sites of Boston. And here again, your tax dollars well spent. Right at Long Wharf is another fine Boston restaurant, Legal Seafood, serving the highest quality seafood, beautifully prepared and served. They have a great fish chowder and clam chowder and all kinds of good seafood at Legal Seafoods. And be sure to tell them I sent you. And as we are now back at Long Wharf, it is the end of our voyage now, so I'll take this opportunity here to thank you all for sailing with us today on behalf of Boston Harbor Cruises, your crew, and myself. We hope you've enjoyed this trip and learned a thing or two, perhaps, about the history of this beautiful, ancient, and very historic city. We invite you to come with us again anytime. Be sure to tell all your friends you had a great cruise on a beautiful day, heard a fabulous, informative narration, and send them on down as well. We also have trips to the Harbor Islands all summer long. Our whale watches run every day to the Stellwagen Bank, And our new high-speed ferry out to Provincetown on the tip of Cape Cod is a great day trip or weekend getaway. Inquire at the office for details on all our cruises.
Okay, we're eating at the No Name restaurant. It's on the pier. There's the front of the menu. There's the back of the menu. I've ordered swordfish. Sheila's ordered a special sauteed lobster with shrimp and scallops. And we've got our seafood chowder, which Sheila says is delicious. I haven't tried it yet.
Very good.
And that's the view where we're sitting. We're on the Boston Harbor.
The reason this is so good.
Oh, yes.
There's Sheila's.
Yeah.
Very much. It's funny.
And there's my swordfish.
Vegas or something, and they have the seafood buffets and all those people just, I mean, it's unbelievable the line.
Okay, that's where we just ate. Actually, our spot was right down past that bus, the No Name restaurant. And it's the Boston Fish Pier. We had some really good food. And it's raining, first time since we've been here. And we're walking over to the Copley place to get a taxi back to our hotel.
They've got Irish music playing.
We're at MJ O'Connor's again. I'm going to have Irish breakfast this time.
Where did you buy that?
Down toward the bottom on the lunch choices. And that's going to be my choice. Irish breakfast.
It just seems like my family, after they got married, their families had dinner together. I can't remember.
$10. Okay, there's my Irish breakfast. It's got eggs, it's got pork chops, it's got French fries, it's got ham, it's got sausages, and it's got toast. And Sheila just got a regular sandwich, as she likes to say. So, I'm not sure what kind. Okay, Sheila wanted me to get a picture of the bar. I'm not quite sure what she was wanting, but I'll try to get it. Okay, we're in the Boston Commons right now. We're getting ready to start the Freedom Trail. We're about 3-4 blocks from our hotel. There's a local patriarch there. Okay, we're at the beginning of the walking tour. There's a visitor center, and there's the red line. Now we're going to follow that red line on a tour. The first stop on the walking tour was the Boston Commons, which I just showed you, and it said it was the oldest public park purchased from William Blackstone in 1634, and that it been the site of hangings, duels, public celebrations, and spirited oratory. Today it continues to host public celebrations. There's some flowers. Kind of look like cabbages, but I think they're flowers. And the first stop on the tour was the Boston Common, but the second stop is going to be the Massachusetts State House, which was Designed by Charles Burkfinch, the State House was completed in January 1798 at a cost of $133,333, more than 5 times the budget. So that tells you that government has not changed in all those years. And there's the fountain. That's in Boston Commons. And we're following along the red brick road. Here we are, walking up the red brick road to the Massachusetts State House, whose gold dome is gilded with 23-karat gold leaf in 1874. Okay, this monument is the Shaw 54th Regiment Memorial. Honors Colonel Robert Gold, Shaw, and members of the Massachusetts 54th Regiment who died in the assault on Fort Wagner, South Carolina, July 18th, 1863. And there's that memorial. And we're going to continue down the red brick road. Unfortunately, the red brick road, which is now painted, led to a shopping area. So on our way to the Park Street Church, we're going to have to stop and shop for a minute. Then we'll head on. Okay. Now we've made it to the Park Street Church, which is, for many years following 1809, the 217-foot white steeple. That's way up there. We've got some pictures of it from a distance. I'll get a picture of it when we get away from it. Was the first landmark a traveler saw upon approaching Boston. Originally the site of a grain storage, the church was built shortly after the new State House was completed. On July 4th, 1829, abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison gave his first public anti-slavery address here, and 2 years later, the hymn America, better known as My Country 'Tis of Thee, was first sung on the church steps. Okay, this is the Granary Burying Ground, so named because of its proximity to Boston's first granary. This is the third oldest burying ground in Boston and the final resting place of many prominent Bostonians. Buried here are John Hancock, Samuel Adams, 8 governors, all 5 Boston Massacre victims, Paul Revere, Ben Franklin's parents, Peter Farrell, and possibly Mother Goose. John Phillips, first mayor. We'll see if we can find at least Paul Revere's gravesite. Here lies, and you can't really read it, but check out that headstone. There's the Franklin grave. Now we're just kind of guessing right now, trying to find out where some of the famousest people are buried. Okay, here we go. And that must be uncommon. But here lies the bones of Mr. Paul Revere. "51 years. $17.54. As you can see, John Hancock. There was a church church I couldn't get earlier. Now it's kind of backlit in the sun, so it's still hard to get, which is one of the first churches here. Oh, that's the big building behind it. Okay. Under order from King James II in 1688, land was seized and the first Anglican church was constructed. By 1749, the original wooden structure was too small for the congregation, and so the Georgian chapel was constructed around the original church. Adjacent to King's Chapel is Boston's first burial ground. We'll show you that shortly. Here you will find the graves of John Winthrop, Massachusetts' first governor William Dawes, Paul Revere's compatriot who also made the ride to Lexington, and Mary Chilton, believed to be the first woman to step off the Mayflower. Okay, there's the burial yard. We're not going to go in it. And King's Chapel is closed, so we're not going to go in it. Next we're headed to the old first public school, statue of Benjamin Franklin. That's okay. Go ahead.
Excuse me.
That's okay. Here's the grave of William Dawes. He rode with Paul Revere. Of course, you don't hear so much about him, but it said he made the ride to Lexington with Paul Revere as his companion. There's Mary Chilton's grave. She's believed to be the first woman off the Mayflower. Okay, this commemorates the site of the oldest school in the United States. Among the school's alumni are Ben Franklin, John Hancock, Samuel Adams, Charles Bulfinch, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and the school continues to operate today at another location. And then there's also a statue of Ben Franklin, which I'll show you in a minute. Commonly stands in front of Old City Hall. And that is Old City Hall right there. And there's Benjamin Franklin's statue right there. And there you go, Benjamin Franklin. Other people taking pictures of it. This is the Old South Meeting House. Built in 1729, second oldest church in Boston. During the British occupation of Boston, this was used as a sanctuary of freedom by Boston troops, as a stable and riding school, and drinks were served here. This is the old State House, one of Boston's oldest public buildings. And it said it played a part in the Revolution, although it doesn't really go into a whole lot of detail as to what part it played. There's a statue of Samuel Adams in front of Farrell Hall. And there is Farrell Hall. back to our hotel. Okay, now we're at Quincy Market Place, which is right behind Barrel Hall. Of course, we were here the other day, so you saw some of it then. And as we go on, we're still following, although it's somewhat covered, the red brick road.
Okay, we've been gone about an hour and a half now. We're still following the little red line, as you see. We're just walking right up the cute little red line. We've just passed about 25 Irish pubs. We're thirsty, but we can't stop because we have to follow the little red line.
Retrace that. Sheila's thirsty. I thought them were cool looking, so I had to stop and take a picture of them. There's a couple more up there.
Oh no, we're in trouble. There's quite a quandary. The red road has been knocked out. We don't have a red path to follow, as you can see.
There's some of the signs here. We're not quite sure where we're at, but we're headed toward Paul Revere's house. It's a little ways down. Sheila thinks we're in Little Italy. And judging from the flags up there, we could be in Little Italy. At least there won't be any crime here unless it's organized.
I mean, all you need to know is the Bible there, you know? Don't worship any idols. Oh, I'm okay.
Of course, right in the middle of Little Italy here is China House Restaurant. Okay, here's St. Leonard's Peace Garden. It's not on our tour, we just thought it was pretty. Here we are at the Paul Revere house. I'll go across the street and get a better shot of it. There's his house. And here's his neighborhood. Okay. It says that Paul Revere probably made this mortar. And this bell. We're going to go in his house now, but there's no photography inside, so we won't be able to take any pictures in there. Okay, Mike's Pastries in Little Italy. We just bought some pastries in here and had some pastries in here. Very good, I might add. So we now ship anywhere, visit our online store, www.mikespastries.com. Here's a statue of Paul Revere right in front of the Old North Meeting House on the way to the Old North Church. There's the Old North Meeting House. Okay, there's a steeple of the Old North Church. I suspect as we get closer it'll be hard to see. But anyway, there's a fountain that's not turned on. And there's the Paul Revere statue back there. There's Sheila taking a picture of it. And then there's the Paul Revere statue. I've just found out that this pretty area we're at is the Paul Revere Mall, where you've got the statue and all of the trees and the fountain's not working. It's the Paul Revere Mall. Now we're at the entrance to the Old North Church. Getting ready to go in there. And up there is the steeple. One by land, two by sea. There's the famous windows. Okay. There's the Old North Church. The signal lanterns of Paul Revere. Displayed in the steeple of this church, April 13, 1775. Warned the country of the march of the British troops to Lexington and Concord. Sorry, I was reading it. I kind of took the picture off of it. There's where they were. Again, I don't know how much of the other one you got. The Paul Revere lantern was displayed in the church steeple way up there. And this is the Old North Church. Sorry about the bouncing. We're going to go down there and see if somebody will take our picture in front of the sign. Okay, here's Copp's Hill Burying Ground, which has 1,000 free blacks, and the British placed cannon here during the Battle of Bunker Hill because of its prominent height overlooking Boston. Okay, we're on the Gray Line bus right now. Back to our hotel.
That's where you'll find Eileen's basement.
Back down to the
Tons of stores back
park.
there. Over here, your left, get out that street.
Actually, that's where we'll be right
Over
there.
here, go right, you have this water fountain.
We better get-
That is where the public hanging
No,
is,
wait,
just midway through the Boston
come back.
Common.
The Boston
Also, on
Common
the upper
Shore.
right-hand side, you're gonna see three period
To help you count,
statues.
this is
These
Wednesday.
statues stand for work, study,
We were
and prayer.
Tuesday,
The center is
and we were
visible
Monday.
information booth.
So I've been on the train
If you have
for
any
3
questions,
days.
we're glad to help you out. That is where you can also pick up the audio.
Okay, we're off the trolley back by Boston Common. And we're getting ready to walk down some side streets on Beacon Hill. $3 and $4 million condos in the old buildings. And that's some of the greenery up on top of the buildings, where they go up there and have their own little parks, I guess. Anyway, Gary Hart lives here with his wife. And I forget who else they said lives in here, but there's several rich, famous people. We're going to walk down some of the side streets. Beacon Hill. Okay. Don't know who lives here. Just some high dollar apartments. Everything's inside of them. There's some more of them. The green, I'm sure, is copper that's turned. Okay, here's some more Beacon Hill apartments. You can see the side of that one. Anyway, we've been told these sell for $3 and $4 and $5 million each. Real thin streets, Beacon Hill. Okay, there's our hotel. It's just a little before dusk. Pretty good picture of it. We're just getting back from our whole day of walking the Freedom Trail and riding the trolley for the third day on one ticket, and we've had a pretty good time. We're going to go to our room, put our pastries up, and then go out for dinner. Here's another view of our hotel. We're on the exact opposite side. This is without the trees in the way. We're getting ready to go in. Okay, we're getting ready to go into Al Dente and Little Italy. We took a cab here. Finish up our trip with an evening up here. We're at Al Dente restaurant. Here's some of its information. There's my soup I ordered. I'm going to put that in scale. There's Sheila's soup, and there's Sheila. So it's so big it takes up the whole screen. There's a drinking glass to put in perspective. And a bread basket. And that's my bowl of soup. Okay, there's my seafood platter. You can see scallops, you can see clams. You can see a marinara sauce. There's Sheila's fettuccine. And we're now over okay, we're back at the Mark's Pastries. And it's just packed. As usual. It's unbelievable of everything they have. Anyway, the place is just packed. Ice creams too. And that's where we were. Mike's pastry again. Place is just packed. Okay, here's our last meal at the airport. Johnny Rockets. We got double cheeseburgers, French fries, onion rings, chocolate malt, and we'll be boarding our plane for too long to head back to Kansas City. This is probably the last time you'll see us.